Hello and welcome to today's episode of Winning Mentality. My name is Daniel Cutright and super stoked to have our guest today, Miss Katie Kline. Katie, how are you?
I'm great.
Awesome. Good to have you on here and give people a little bit of context. We actually know each other from our days in college, Lynchburg College, which is now University of Lynchburg. I don't know if that ages us or not, but knew each other a little bit through athletics, and you played field hockey, tennis, ran track there, multi-sport athlete, now working full-time as a nurse and doing some coaching outside of that, a number of other cool things. So you're not busy at all, are you?
No, well-rounded athlete, and also now well-rounded a person in society.
I love it. I love it. So, and then if that wasn't enough, I'm pretty excited to have people, hear from you today too, because you've started even outside of nursing, really putting out a lot of cool content for other nurses, doing that through some different platforms. Maybe talk a little bit about, to kick us off, why you started doing some of that and what type of content are you putting out?
Yeah. So, what started as I think the innocent, I'm just going to download TikTok just to watch videos. I'm just going to make one. And it's kind of steamrolled from there. And I think, with social media nowadays, you have to really hone down who you're talking to and what you are passionate about. Because if you're speaking to everybody, you're speaking to nobody. So, that's kind of where I got started was really just, I realized that there was a me-size hole out there on social media where there were a bunch of, nursing students, current nurses that had a lot of questions around pediatric intensive care. So that's kind of where, I found my foothold. And I think that personality wise, I love to teach people. I'm also a fan of, still being a student as well, and learning as I'm teaching other people. So it's really it's beautiful. It's opened up this area for me to not only expand my knowledge base, but then, service good information to other people and teach them, and answer their questions that they have.
That's awesome. And that wasn't always how social media started for you, right?
No, it was just the standard Instagram account that's my life, what I want to share with people on a day-to-day basis. But now it's really turned around of, not only incorporating my life, but in a way that services other people and their needs.
Yeah. And since you've started putting out that content too, I mean, what's your follower account at on, let's say TikTok and Instagram, for example?
Oh my gosh. So TikTok, I literally went from, just having a couple hundred followers, and now I'm almost at 40K. And
Wow.
then same thing with Instagram. This is where it gets a little hairy because, that it started out as a personal account that I made public. And with that transition, and I really think with Instagram's algorithm changing to push Reels content to more people that might not otherwise see your profile, using that and kind of synergizing the two platforms using video media, that has exponentially grown my account in just a couple months since they updated that part of the app. So right now I'm sitting almost, I think it's at 5K or something like that, which to me, it's never really about the follower count. I
Right.
want to service other people. But I think, you can easily get caught up in vanity metrics and the likes and stuff. And that's not what it's about for me. It's about creating content that I like and that helps other people.
Absolutely. I think sometimes it's almost like a chicken and the egg conversation too. It's like people want to grow their accounts, but would you say it was more like the account grew first, or it was more like, hey, I put out some good content, and then once that content was there, that's when the follower count and those other vanity metrics that maybe you talk about followed?
I think, yeah, I definitely think it's the latter of the two. I just, I really honed in on what I wanted to put out there and what people were asking for. And, when you can combine those two things and also produce something that's, good quality, that's when the ball kind of starts rolling for us. So.
And so on that note of listening to what people were asking for. So you started just kind of taking inventory of inquiries you were getting, and that's what helped shape some of the content you were putting out. How were you doing that? Were you doing that through like polls or?
No, so initially that was really just through TikTok. Like people with it, whatever video that you put out, they will just randomly, comment things, question, they see what your profile is about, like who you are and where your niche is. And then, people, they just ask questions. And so I really just listened to those. I tried to answer them as quickly as I could. And so, I obviously don't have the answers to everything. And so it was great because then I continually got to learn as well, reach out to other people and ask them questions. And so, especially this year, just like in terms of the pandemic, where I feel like we've had this disconnect with people and being able to communicate, and we're just trying to get by like day by day. This for me has opened up doorways that to people that I otherwise probably would have never met, and so in a way, I'm definitely grateful for the opportunity to kind of step back and focus in on this. And yeah.
That's really cool. Just an avenue to add value to people. And it wasn't like, excuse me, you had everything completely figured out with this before. You mentioned you're still learning as you go. Is that right?
Yeah. Right. And everything's continually changing. And I mean, we might look here in a couple of years and Instagram might not even be really a platform, that people visit as often. It might, go to the wayside, kind of like MySpace.
Totally.
I don't know if I'm really dating myself there.
No, that's funny because I actually just made a joke about MySpace Tom last night. That's really funny. No, that's awesome. So talking about just kind of nursing in general, right? You're putting out some good content. You're figuring it out as you go. I think one note before we maybe go to the kind of the next question too, is I think a lot of times people, when they're looking to start an entrepreneurial venture or anything, oftentimes they'll maybe try to have everything figured out before. It's like they overanalyze. And I tell people that about this podcast all the time. I said, I had no idea what I was doing with podcasting. There's still a lot of things I have no idea on. I was asking you questions about things that really helped me out too. But I think it's just that mentality of getting started and putting yourself in motion, and you'll learn a lot of those things along the way. And so on that, your content being primarily focused towards nursing, how did you get started into nursing? Did you know that that was something that you always wanted to do?
Oh my goodness. So it wasn't something that I always knew I wanted to do. I wasn't like the kid that grew up and like had their nurse's outfit. They're like, I'm going to be a nurse. Um, it was, my mom was kind of like, she was my rock in making this decision. And, throughout high school, like middle school, high school, was very sports oriented. I actually wanted to play. I told my mom, I was like, I want to play for a U.S. women's field hockey team. Like that's what I want to do. And Anne looked at me and was like, we're not doing that. We're going to go to school. We're going to go and into a degree path that can get us a job afterwards. And so I think some of the pivotal moments for me is that, I've always loved helping other people. That's just my mentality, and how I'm comfortable. So in terms of things that set me up for going to nursing school, and where I am now, is that in high school, our curriculum offered the opportunity to become an EMTB, so just basic certification, for an emergency medical technician. And I decided, I was like, yeah, I'm going to build that into, my coursework. Took that course, and then at the end tested out and had several opportunities to do volunteer hours within our local community, running on the ambulance, and just seeing how to, quickly assess a patient, package them, and transport them to the hospital. It was so exciting to me. I learned a ton. The personnel that I worked with were amazing. My teacher at the high school, she was amazing. And I think that really set me up for moving in the direction of being in the medical field. And so it came the decision of, oh, like, do you want to be like a doctor or a nurse, and I just wasn't interested in being a physician because I felt like there was some sort of aspect that I would lose in personal human connection. And, where I am now, that's not the case. Like physicians have personal connections with their patients. But I was looking more, I didn't care as much about the disease itself that's affecting a patient. I cared about how it affected them as a human. So with my experience as an EMT, just seeing the nurses and how they worked with a patient that we've transported in, that definitely sparked my interest there. And around junior year, my mom was like, well, we need to start looking at colleges where you want to go. And I still told her, I was like, Mom, I still want to play field hockey in college. So how can we synergize those two things together, and hopefully make a good college career out of that. So that's kind of how I got onto this track.
Very cool. Do you think that path is similar or different for most people coming into nursing?
I think it's different, especially now with the outreach that I get from like high school students. I think a lot of them they know that they want to be nurses, and it's just what pathway are they going to take? Are they going to be like an associate degree nurse and get to the bedside quickly and then go back for their BSN, or are they going to do what I did, and go to a 4-year college for a bachelor's of science in nursing?
Yeah.
So I think that there are a lot of people that are, they know exactly what they want to do. They're pretty savvy about it, and asking the right people for advice to get there.
And you're working as a PICU nurse now?
hmm Yeah, pediatric intensive care.
Very cool. Love it. And that's not how you started. You started bedside.
So not necessarily bedside. I started in a procedural area. So I
Okay.
worked in the pediatric operating room. There, it's way different than what you learn in school. And I don't even necessarily think that nursing school sets you up to be a bedside nurse. There's a lot of, hands-on skills, time management and things like that, that you just can't learn in nursing school. You have to learn that, when you're actually on the unit in your orientation. But yeah, that I knew the hospital that I wanted to work at and the area that I wanted to stay in. And so I applied even before I graduated. And unfortunately, the interview that I wanted dropped 2 weeks before because they filled the position. So the only thing that I had left open was an interview for the operating room, which, for me, I was just like, you know what? It might not be my first choice, but it's a job, at a healthcare system that I want to work at, that I know is going to support me. And I was like, and it's my foot in the door. It's a learning opportunity. So I took it and I ran with it. And I can honestly say, like, if I hadn't done that, I'm not sure I would have ended up where I am now, or be as happy as I am now,
Yeah.
with my career choice. So.
Gotcha. That's great. You talked about a little bit too, just going into it from maybe not necessarily the science side, but more from, hey, I've always wanted to help people.
Mhm.
I feel like nurses, that's such a vital part of that role from what I gather and understand, because you have families that are coming in, especially in the pediatric unit, where they have sick children. Maybe it's the first time they've been in that scenario. There's probably a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety.
Mhm.
How do you work with those families and with those kids to make them feel more at ease?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's scary. And some of these kids, they haven't been in a healthcare system, let alone an intensive care unit. And obviously, if they're there, they're a sick little critter. So, a lot of my training and meeting children at their developmental level, that happened in training and on the floor, and just being, I, I really just think that it's my personality. um, I coming in, smiling, getting down on their level, explaining the things that they see in their room and being like, this is your room. These are the things that you're seeing. You're going to be here the whole time with me, setting realistic expectations for them. I'm here until 7:30. So you and we're going to play together, and using terminology that they understand. So I don't know. The scenarios are definitely different. It varies. Some experiences are definitely you like hit it off better with,
Yeah.
certain patients and families. And then there's other times where it's just nothing seems to work. So, those situations, I think it just really comes down to, what do you need right now? What's important right now to you? And how can I make you feel more at ease? What questions do you have? And just really explaining everything that they're seeing, everything that I'm doing in the simplest terms possible. So it's almost like the five whys.
Yeah.
I'll be like, this is why I'm doing this, why I'm doing this, why, and it just keeps on going down the row until like there's no possibility of doubt that they understand, what I'm doing for them.
Yeah, that's a valuable communication tip. I think even when we're dealing with adults too, is sometimes we try to, you know, make things overly complex when in reality it's let's just break it down to the fundamentals. Let's talk in simple form here. Um,
Yeah.
so communication being such a vital aspect of that, even outside of communicating with the families and the children, as a nurse, you're dealing with a lot of different people at the hospital, doctors, etc. Talk about the communication from that angle. what
Right.
makes what makes that effective? How do you maybe just work through those conversations?
Yeah. So this is what I love most about my unit, in working in PICU, is I think that everybody, and this is not to say that anywhere else in the hospital isn't geared like this, but when you are caring for children, I think that there's something different the way that people care. And our team, we're a bunch of listeners. I think there's a mutual respect across the board that sometimes you don't see in other places. So it's like, even though I might need to go and talk to my nurse practitioner or my attending physician, who are obviously like advanced practice providers, and me feeling like, oh, I'm just a lowly bedside nurse. That's not the case at all. Like, we each bring something to the table, to service these patients. So when I speak, or I have a concern about something, or I want to bring something to their attention, like I know that I instantaneously have their undivided attention for those things. So I mean, communication styles, we learn about these like in nursing school. We have like SBAR, so presenting like situation with the patient, their background, my assessment, and then the recommendation. So, if I have a kid that comes in, that's an asthmatic, and all of a sudden, their work of breathing is more increased, they're desaturating, just working through that problem and being like, hey, like, I would like to put oxygen on them, maybe a little bit higher flow. And maybe we can get them a couple treatments that will help open up their airways. And just appropriately identifying problems that are going on with them. But and just in terms of the PICU, I feel like we're very astute to our children, and their needs. And there's, I think, a lot of people that just, they care very deeply. So, and with kids, things can change in an instant.
Yeah, that's awesome. um, on the note of, we talked about communication, and then even in nursing, there's probably a lot of things that are very challenging, or talk about the mindset management side of just like, you have all this going on, but then how do you manage, maybe like, is there emotional mental stress, like is there a certain level of compartmentalization that you're working to not take some of these things home with you? Like, how do you work through that side of things?
Right. And absolutely. And just like I said earlier, with kids, it's different.
Yeah.
The wins are bigger, the losses are harder. So, especially in our area, we're there to care for them in the most invasive and intense way possible, to make sure that they survive their
Yeah.
experience with us, whatever it be that they came in for. So, there is a bit of mindset management that goes on with that. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I ever took away from an attending physician is, are we doing something to this child? Are we doing something for them?
Mm.
So that is most of the time how I approach every situation. And so it might be difficult. Like we might have to intubate a child and put a breathing tube in them and let, a ventilator do the work of breathing for them. But again, if that takes away that critical period and allows them to rest and recover, you know, I know that breathing tube is going to come out eventually. And then in terms of, maybe inserting a chest tube, yeah, that's a pretty painful procedure. But again, if it alleviates, any fluid that's in their chest or air that might have gotten in there, that chest tube eventually will come out. It will be, and then, it will be a memory for them that they survived that.
Yeah.
But in terms of just mindset management for the shift, uh, I think of my shift as the big picture. There's a beginning, a middle, and end. I know what I need to do in the beginning of my shift is, really assessing my patients and setting them up for, what is my plan of action for them for the day? How can I take them from point A to point B in just 12 and a half hours? And sprinkled in throughout that, they're like acts of daily living, like our cares, getting them up out of bed, turning them, making sure that they're clean, and then dealing with the ebbs and flows in care, because sometimes we do have critical moments where you could have a code, so that puts a little hiccup in the grand scheme of the shift. But at the same time, mindset management, it's like, let's take care of what's important now,
Yeah.
um, and get them managed, and then let's get back on track with the grand scheme of the shift. So I like to think of my shift in blocks as beginning, middle, and end.
That's a really good way to structure things, is breaking it down to smaller pieces.
Mm-hmm.
The approach too is one of, just as I'm listening to you talk, it's your job is a service first job, right? Like you are constantly giving and serving people all day long and almost taking a lot of things off of their plate that they don't have to worry about. And so in all of that giving, do you find that it's draining at all? Like obviously you love what you do, and I hear that from a lot of nurses, but like are there ways that you have to, let's say after the shift, put back into yourself, and how do you do that?
Absolutely. I mean, almost every shift, I think I come home, like as soon as I've like given a report on that patient, put my jacket on, I'm out to my car. I take quiet time on the way
Yeah.
back. I typically like I'll listen to music going to work, but on the way back, I really take time to just self-reflect and be like, what was really good about today? What was not so great? Could I have done anything better for this patient? Or, just a time of reflection. And I will say that sometimes I get home and Mike, my husband, he can tell what kind of day I've had. And it's kind of hard because you spend all day serving other people, that when you come home, it's like you still have family that needs you. I have my fur babies, I have Michael, like, we need our time, to connect with each other and see like how our day went. But there are moments where I'll literally get home and just park and take a sit and just completely decompress. So it's in terms of trying to leave things at work. I think that I do a very good job of that, because at the end of the day, it's like I get to leave. These patients don't, like their families don't typically. So I'm, in terms of that, like grateful for that. And I know if I don't decompress at the end, um, I can't bring the best of myself the next day for them. And some shifts are definitely harder than others. Some require tears afterwards, just to let the full impact of what I've seen, what I've done for patients, the emotional stress that they exude, and just having empathy. That's what it's all about, is empathizing with your patients. So it's definitely hard some days to not just leave all of that baggage at work. So
Yeah.
coming home, I think it's just a lot of self-reflection, tea, sometimes a beverage,
Yeah.
it just depends. And then also just talking with family, and reconnecting like with my people.
Yeah. No, you said some really good things in there. And as you're talking, I remember hearing, I was at Purdue at a conference a couple of years ago, and we heard this guy give a talk his background was interesting. He was actually a comedian and therapist. So he brought like a kind of funny spin to some things that were a little bit deeper. But he was talking about, he actually worked with police officers as one of his groups. And that was one of the things that he would coach them up on. Is he said, hey, when you get off your shift and you pull into your driveway, sitting there for 15 minutes and actually meditating in your vehicle. And because if you don't, what happens is you come off of this shift in a very highly stressed, charged up state. And if you walk straight into the house, then you bring that in and you don't have that gap of like resetting your system almost before you're bringing that into family. And, he just talked about, the benefits of doing that, which I think is super important there.
No, I can't agree more.
Cool. So in all of this too, do you feel like, being able to manage these things well, you come from an athletics background, were there certain things, you played field hockey at Lynchburg, which you guys did pretty well there, won, I think 4 conference titles in the time that you were there. So undefeated, unscathed record. Do you feel like some of these things that you learned maybe as an athlete kind of helped you as you moved into your nursing career?
I do. And I mean, I've played field hockey, I think, since the age of 7. So I've worked under a number of coaches. And I think just being an athlete and having a teachable mindset my entire life, there have been coaches that have just bestowed just little tidbits and gifts of knowledge for my own resiliency. And of course, it's like sports, it's not a high stakes thing, but working within a team setting, that's allowed me to, not only be responsible and accountable for my own actions, but also in terms of the greater scheme within my team. Like what are my actions right now doing to service my team and how we're working together. So I think that's been a huge centerfold in just how well I work with our team now. I've just always had a team mentality. Like, what do I do so that our team can succeed? And in terms of especially being in the field hockey team at Lynchburg, I mean, Enza Steele, she was very much team oriented. But like I said earlier, that what's important now, that was actually something that I had written on the inside of my stick, was just the little compressed, win. What is important right now? So whether it was practice and giving 100% there, or, the moves that I was making in the game, what was important right there in that present moment to set us up for, those big overarching goals that we had for our season, the number of wins that we wanted, winning ODACs every year, getting into the national tournament, going as far as we can, those, it's just little bricks that every single day you build that wall to success, that, that overarching goal. So definitely being a part of team mentality, that's helped me out a lot, because it also asks you to look into yourself and dig deep, see what you're capable of, and really push yourself.
That's awesome. So you weren't trying to win ODAX or make a tournament run right there every single practice, but in essence, it was those little things that you were focused on that built up to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even talking about like even the season, like, with that mindset, if you lost a game, if you had a hiccup, what's the response to that, right?
It wasn't a good day.
Right. When you're used to winning, it's not a good day, but being able to deal with that in the moment and not, let it weigh you down too, I would imagine was something that Enza probably talked about.
Right. And, I say this a lot, is that, I think we learn more from our losses and our mistakes than we do from just getting it right 100% of the time.
Totally.
Like, I don't see any growth that happens, when you're just doing it right constantly. So especially now, I'm at the point in my career where I'm teaching a lot of other nurses, orienting them and precepting and getting them ready to be on their own. And when they make a mistake, it's like, oh, oh my gosh. And it's just like, listen, there nothing bad happened here. Like, it's just a mistake. And trust me, now that that's happened, the way that you feel, you're never going to make that mistake again. Like it just
Right.
it imprints on you, and it builds upon, your prior experiences. I was like, so don't take it too hard. But what are you going to do now? Like how are you going to change your behavior now in order to not let that happen again?
Such a vital lesson
Mhm.
for so many people, because I think we live in a society too where a lot of times, failure is demonized, or it's, we don't want to put people in positions where they're going to fail or feel like they didn't succeed. But that's how you learn how to succeed, right? Like when you're thinking about, if you think about winning, you would never actually fully understand what it feels like to win if you've never first experienced a loss. Being in Charlottesville, we can all relate to UVA basketball, and some people will probably hate me retelling this story again, but like, you think about, they lose to a 16 seed, but then they come back and win the national championship. And Tony Bennett's classic quote was, "Adversity, when used the right way, will take you to a place that failure, that you would have otherwise never been to," right? And so it is that mindset of being able to learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Those things, you've seen them in your own athletic career. You've implemented them in the nursing world too. You're also coaching high school field hockey. How do you work with some of your high school kids on some of these things?
Oh man. Um, you know, and part of coaching is, that's something that now, I never thought that I would get to that point. I've always thought, I'm going to be the athlete, and coaching, I think, came naturally though. And it really fills my cup. And I think, just working with my girls now, they remind me so much of myself in high school. They want to do good. Um, but again, they need that love and nurturing at that point, in their lives, to be successful and know that it is okay to fail. So while that might be, like, where they are right now might be the most serious time in their life, and they're running around, they have so many things that they have to do, between school and extracurriculars, and that's what's so important to them right now. I think what I bring to the table is my own sense of humor, and personal experiences, to be like, hey, it's actually not that big a deal. And really just pull them back into the present, because a lot of them do. I think that they think about the future, and getting things done, and they're just constantly going, and it's like, hey, let's slow it down. Yeah, you got a paper due on Tuesday and stuff, and I know that that's on your mind, but right now we're in practice, and we're building brick by brick, for the games that we got coming up in the season. So let's put those things on the back burner. So it's almost teaching them that compartmentalization that I do, in
Yeah.
work, where it's like, when I'm at work, I am 100% there. When I'm at home, I'm not thinking about work like that. This is what is important right now. So just teaching them, and also all the little lessons that my coaches have taught me throughout the years. I still keep in contact, with my high school coach, Coach Curtin. And I, the first year I coached for this team, I mean, I messaged him several times, and I'm like, oh my gosh, first of all, I have to apologize for the way I acted in high school. I know, I know this took a lot. I know this took a lot of you to come and coach us, and I was just like, I know I was probably not the best all the time, but I really appreciate the effort that you put in. And now that I'm doing this, I know just how much heart you had and effort that you put in to be there. I was like, so first of all, thank you. But then, we banter back and forth about, how do I motivate this kid? Like, what about this one? Do you have tips for that? So again, it's just like that community and connection piece, that really has come full circle for me, between being a lifelong athlete and now giving back to a sport that has given me so much.
Well said. Really well said. And you kind of even answered my next question that I was going to ask you too, but it's, you're kind of in this role now of almost mentoring people in the sense of your high school athletes, but in a way mentoring a lot of other nurses on things as well. It sounds like you still have some mentors, people that you seek advice from, or people that are helping you work through these things too, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. The nurses that, have been there, been around the block for a long time. And even the nurses, that I look up to because, I don't think I'm done in my nursing career. Like, I still think there's an opportunity for me to advance and maybe go into like a master's of science degree within nursing. So, it's constantly looking forward and setting those little goals. Uh, but in terms of the nurses that I look up to, those are the nurses that are in my unit that have been there for forever, that just have, I mean, that's the wonderful thing about PICU is because nursing school doesn't set you up to be a pediatric nurse. You get people from all over. You might have had a nurse that did like peds oncology and then now is a PICU nurse. And so they bring that specialized training. And then you might have another nurse that worked in adult cardiac and now they're in PICU and they've been there for 15 years. So they have their own stories and perspectives. And so when I'm grasping at straws and trying to think through things, oftentimes those are my go-to people. I'm like, have you ever experienced this? Like, how would you go about this? And just having that conversation, and trying to learn. And again, that is what nursing is about. It's about lifelong learning because things are constantly changing.
Yeah, that's really good. In talking about just seeking different perspectives, it almost brings me back to a point that you said earlier about being able to empathize. And I think, part of learning in anything that you're doing is understanding that people come to the table with a lot of different perspectives that are based on their lived experiences. And I think that when you understand that, it can allow you to have that deeper level of empathy and allow you to listen better. And all of these things feed into being able to communicate effectively. And so all these different things that you're doing, whether it's coaching or nursing, so much of the root of that is effectively communicating and building trust with people. And then all these other things kind of flow out of that. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's just, I remember what it felt like to be new,
Mm,
and the fear and oh no, what if I mess up? Like, I remember that. And um I wish my preceptors and the people who mentored me were excellent. They met me where I was. They took me where I needed to be successful in this role. And so it's again that full circle of just coming back around and picking up the next person that reminds me of me, and that fear, and trying to mitigate those things for them, and like all in all build stronger nurses.
mm. If you could give, maybe as we start to kind of wind down here, if you could give a tip for someone that's new in nursing, if there's something maybe you wish someone would have told you coming in, or things that you've learned along the way, what might be one kind of overarching tip that you would give?
Probably to just slow down so that your skills can catch up. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You're not going to be top of the totem pole, um, just as you're starting out. And uh, I think we get wrapped up in looking, at somebody else and seeing how successful they are, how knowledgeable, and that they're an expert in their field, and just looking then at ourselves and being like, I'm not there.
Mm,
And that can be a very overwhelming feeling of imposter syndrome, that you're not meant to be there, but you are. And everybody starts somewhere. And at the end in the beginning of the day, everybody gets out of bed and puts on their pants the same way.
yep.
Like, so I think it just bringing yourself back, allowing yourself grace, um, to be where you are, and just, you know, little steps every single day in this marathon of trying to get where it is that you want to go. and,
Yeah.
and that aligns with your goals.
Love it. And I think people can apply that to whether they're nursing or whatever it is that they're doing. So this is super helpful, Katie. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing your time. Appreciate what you do as a nurse to all of our healthcare workers, especially during this time. Super, super appreciative. How can people find out more about what it is that you're doing? What's your maybe your TikTok, your Instagram handles? Because I
Oh
think a
my
lot of
gosh.
nurses are gonna. This is awesome. They're gonna get a lot of value out of this, but we want to keep adding value to them as well.
Yeah. Well, both my Instagram and my TikTok handles are well and good RN. I can't even remember where I came up with that handle, but that's what I'm sticking to for right now. So yeah, you can reach out to me there. It's a public profile, and all of my other stuff is linked in my bio.
Awesome. Really appreciate the time today, Katie. This was awesome catching up. So certainly, I know you'll keep probably adding more cool things onto your plate, doing more things, and so we'll look forward to seeing where it goes.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
All right, you bet. Have a great day.
Okay.